Hi everyone, thanks for coming back and having a look at this video. It's kind of a recap of the A's to M's of the alternative indie section of my CD collection. So this is a TLDR for those of you who haven't been through all the other videos, but this is a catch up. So I'll try and be quick and just do a run through of my recommendations from, well, first up the A's. And that is American Analogue set, and this is one that is called Know by Heart, and of course I had 3 of these, and this is the one I'm putting forward as considering getting for your collection. So American Analogue set. I'm just going to try and get through these reasonably quickly, but I might touch on a few things when I get to some that I want to talk about. This is Atlas Sound, and it's Parallax, so this is definitely one to consider getting. If you're into alternative indie music and you haven't heard of them, go and check out Atlas Sound, but this is definitely my favourite album. And then, of course, I have an honourable mention. I don't have 3 of their albums, but I would say check out Amason. They're from Sweden, and they're sort of made up of a bunch of different bands from Sweden, one of them being Mike Snow, which I mention in the M's. But I do think this is worth considering. I don't know how easy it is to get your hands on a physical format, but look around. It's cool. And then, of course, I got to Beck. And I actually, on reflection, I think when I have a musician that I have a lot of albums, and I think I had 8 Beck albums, I'll probably just focus in on them, do a video just on the one. I didn't do it for Beck. I included him in the E.P.s. But he obviously took a bit of time. But Odelay is the one to consider getting if you've never heard of it. Beck Odelay was quite groundbreaking for its time in terms of just the kind of music he brought together and the way he composed things. Then another Beck album, because I have so many, this is just more mellow, beautiful, introspective. So a different type of Beck. And so it's got more of his gentle playing and singing. And then, of course, moving almost before we go too much further, Beach House. This is Bloom. But, of course, everything will be mentioned in the description. So even if I haven't covered the titles, which I know with Beck, Sea Change. Sea Change. There you go. So, yeah, Beach House is a must, I feel. I really like Bloom, but I also like Teen Dream. Those are the 2 albums I have. And, of course, Broken Social Scene. So I'm putting up Hives as a really good one to get into. But just check them out, because I've got a number of Broken Social Scene, and they're really amazing. So Broken Social Scene is in there. And I'm trying to keep this in order, so I'm going to move on to another B. We're still in the B's, because B's was a big section. I had to break it in half and have part 1 and 2. I'm probably going to do that for the P's as well, which is coming up. Beta Band 3 E.P.s is well worth getting. So this has got some amazing tracks on it. They do have other albums. They have a self-titled album, actually, which I didn't mention. I showed it, but it's called The Beta Band. And then, of course, they had a couple of other albums after that. But 3 E.P.s was when they brought their E.P.s together onto, let me try and get that, onto one compilation. It's interesting, some bands just make a lot of EPs to start with, and it's really good sometimes when they collect them together, because they can just be released on small vinyl releases of the EPs. I then jumped over to Britpop with Blur, so I really like their first album, Leisure. There is a self-titled Blur album which I think had a lot of interest because of Song 2. But this is my favourite album, and they've got a bunch of good albums. They're worth checking out. And of course I talked about Britpop and Live Forever, and of course the competition between Blur and Oasis, which I think if you have a look at the trailer to Live Forever, they kind of want to forget about it. That competition was sort of something that the media generated. And an honourable mention too would be Brian Jonestown Massacre. I started watching that documentary Dig that I mentioned again, and yeah, they're really worth looking into. So this is Take It From The Man. This is probably my favourite Brian Jonestown Massacre album. Check that out. And we're up to the C's. And I'm going to start with Caribou, and I did mention Caribou as having a few Caribou albums, and Swim is really the one. If you are creating an alternative CD collection, check out Caribou Swim as being probably his most prominent, but I like a lot of Caribou actually. I've got a few albums and may get more. You know, I'm always buying new albums, and you can always go back and find people that you didn't know about or albums that you don't have that you want to check out. Cat Power. So moving along, we've got Cat Power Underseas. The Greatest is really my favourite Cat Power album, and it's an amazing album. It's a must-have, this one, in my opinion. So check out Cat Power, The Greatest. And where am I up to now? Jumping to D's, Death Cab for Cutie. They've got a few albums, and they are pretty popular in the alternative indie scene, so this is one that isn't their oldest, but it is actually, one of my favourite. And I don't think it's Narrow Stairs. It's hard to read that. I think I showed off the label, but that just gives some of the tracks that's on here. Narrow Stairs is the name of this album. It will be listed, of course. And then I jump to the J's, actually. And I'm looking over, no, I don't. Grizzly Bear. I did mention Grizzly Bear, so I'm going to bring that back up. Veckatimest. I struggled saying Veckatimest, but that is my favourite Grizzly Bear album. And of course, I mentioned that they're kind of Americana. Well, their Yellow House album to me I thought was. And then I listened to it and I thought, yeah, there's a little bit of folk country twang in a couple of the tracks. But actually, they're just standard alternative indie music, really. And I think I want to do a video where we talk about that and what does that actually mean as opposed to pop music, because obviously some of the tracks on Grizzly Bear albums are quite poppy, very upbeat and fun to listen to. So I don't know, because I don't want to turn people off by saying something's sort of got a country element to it or it's Americana or something like that. That's not really a good description of Grizzly Bear. But of course I thought the name, I likened it to Band of Horses. Band of Horses definitely have a bit more of a country folk feel to them. Grizzly Bear, not so much. It sort of gets quite poppy, quite interesting, experimental. And they're actually, I think, a number of their albums, if not, just are on the Warp label, which is kind of unusual because Warp is typically electronica. Then getting to Jim O'Rourke, and I'm bringing this one up because it's, I guess the cover, while it's kind of kinky and quirky, it's not as confronting as the other one, but also this one I really like. It's a great album. Jim O'Rourke is just a musician's musician. He turns up in a lot of places, Sonic Youth, for example. He produces a lot of people. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but look up Jim O'Rourke. This is called Insignificance. It's a beautiful album. It's amazing. And then to round out the A to M's, I jump all the way to M for highly recommended being My Bloody Valentine. And I was reluctant to do that at first, but honestly, this is Loveless. I shouldn't have to read it, but it is a very well-known alternative indie album, My Bloody Valentine. It's really well worth having. Check it out. You probably have heard of My Bloody Valentine, but if you haven't, you may like it, so have a listen. I'm going to move on to the ends soon, so that's just a brief recap of A to M's. Of course, there could be others in the ATMs. I missed out a few. I just wanted to recap with ones that I would say should definitely be in your alternative indie collection. And then, of course, you can have a look at the other videos and see what else I covered, because there are other bands that I haven't covered here. So, yeah, please have a look. Keep coming back, and see you next time.